A friend who keeps up with a lot of what I share about my life recently asked me this question. He said, "How can you write an entire book about an old dirt road?" I'd never really thought about it like that, and it's a fair question. And so I suppose you could say The King of Highbanks Road is a book about several things. It's difficult to say exactly when, but sometime in the late 1980s, a way of life that had existed for centuries simply died. A unique set of circumstances came together, forcing small farm families across rural America to make a tough decision. They had to get big, or they had to go home. For the little guy with just a few hundred acres and a 6-row planter, well, there was just no room left on the landscape for him. And I believed it was important to tell the story of living through those consequences before we all forgot about it. Next, The King of Highbanks Road is just as much a story about people, place, and culture. We often speak about the heartland of America. Well, some of the kindest, most generous, and fascinating people in our heritage were the small farm families who fed and clothed America in the 1970s and 80s. I wanted to pay tribute to these wonderful people. And finally, The King of Highbanks Road is the not-so-uncommon story of a father and son in rural America who worked together tilling the ground, failing to understand one another in such an unfortunate way that they nearly gave up on one another. But the good news is that they didn't. There was a time in my life when I despised everything I could find and associate with my father. The land, our home, and everything about the way we lived. And so what I'm happy to say about The King of Highbanks Road is that, as much as anything, this is the story of a boy who learned to love home again. I hope you'll enjoy reading it as much as I enjoyed writing it.